Welcome to Green Card Guys TV. Today we have a special guest named Melissa Green. Pleasure to meet her through one of our networking meetings. And I always try to love to invite guests who can be have so much knowledge to share with our audience here at Green Card Guys. Because some of y'all are business owners, some of you are thinking about creating a business in America. Maybe you're an entrepreneur in a different country, but you're probably thinking, I need to know more information, but what do I need to know? So Melissa Green has, so let's invite Melissa to the show. Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Hi, how are you doing?
Great, great. Thanks for spending some time with us. Greatly appreciate it because, as I mentioned, our audience has, some business owners and there's a lot to know. And actually, your niche is something that I haven't come across and I thought was very valuable to our audience.
Thank you. Happy to share.
Can you share? I know you're with TJ Corporate Credit. Can you share a little bit about what you do with them?
So I'm with TG Corporate Credit Consultants. I'm the Director of Business Development there. We have a multitude of different services that we provide. That's going to depend on the business owner as far as what they need and usually what we pair them up with. But normally I talk to people the most often about corporate credit solutions because this is something that about 95% of the business owners that I meet with, even people who have been in business for years, know nothing about. And the information that is out there is either inaccurate or missing information. So I do a lot of education around this subject, but I'm happy to talk about any of the things that we offer.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you because yeah, sharing your knowledge and just educating, sharing with others is very important, so they can take the next steps, right? Just build this American dream, start their American dream, as they say. So, as I mentioned about our audience, they don't have a social security number. It's not that quick, like just apply. You have to be a permanent resident or a citizen to have a social security number. So they have some challenges. Fortunately, in Texas, you can establish a corporation and a company, but with credit, there are some challenges. So, how do people access capital, or how do they get started without a social number?
So, one of the interesting things that we do, and one of the reasons why people outside the United States will use our services, or people just coming into the country, because there are ways to build capital without personal guarantees. Personal guarantees will require a social security number. So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit just to
Sure.
explain kind of what that actually means. When we open a business, we're really doing it for three reasons. We want to look legitimate in the eyes of the world. We want those tax deductions, and we want to be able to separate our personal and our business finances. We want to be able to do that because if we encumber our names, our social security numbers, our date of birth, any of those things into our business, we have this thing called a corporate veil, which is what is protecting us from lawsuits and liabilities. And so every time that we put our name in our business, whether it's on a commercial real estate lease, if it is on a vehicle for the business, a loan, a line of credit, anytime that we put our name in our business, we're piercing a hole in our corporate veil and we're leaving ourselves open for lawsuits and liabilities. And so what we need to do is keep those two things separate. The hard part about that is when we go to the bank and we open our business bank account. First thing they always ask for is a social security number because they want to be able to do a personal credit check. They want to make sure that we're going to be able to pay back these loans because they use something called secured money. And secured money is government regulated, government insured money. They had to make sure that they're going to get their money back. And so when you go to the bank, they're always going to ask you for a personal guarantee. And a personal guarantee means that if I take out this loan, I'm Melissa Green, with everything that I own, my house, my car, my 401k, my kids' college funds, and every penny that I make into the future belong to this lending institution, which is risky for myself, but it also makes it impossible for someone who doesn't have a social security number to access the capital that they need to get their business going or to maintain it, right? To always have cash flow. So the alternative to using secured money is using unsecured money, which is going to come in the form of credit. There's three types of credit in the United States. You have personal credit, which you had to have your social security number for. You have business credit, which is really an extension of your personal credit. So it's credit that's for your business, but it's backed by a social security number. It's not really great either, really, because that means that the business owner is liable. They're held to the same standards as personal credit. So if they use more than 30%, it's going to bring down their personal credit score, makes it hard for them to extend a line of credit, makes it impossible to get a loan. And so we want to use corporate credit, which is credit that's for the business, but it's backed by the EIN of the company. So the EIN is the social security number of the business. It's recognized as a person. And so someone who's coming into the United States without a social security number can build credit on their EIN the same way that you could do with a social security number. The problem with it is that less than 5% of vendors, lenders, creditors, suppliers, financial institutions, they don't report those positive payment histories to the business credit bureaus because it costs them money. They're not required to do it. And so where we come into play is we're helping a business owner build a positive payment history, build capital and credit access on the EIN of the business by making sure that those transactions get reported to the business credit bureaus using an EIN. So someone coming in the United States without a social security number, this is how we can access large amounts of capital with potentially lower interest.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't think,
That was a big mouthful, but
yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, so 3 types of credit, and yeah, usually, so that, like, for example, line of credit, does that fall in between like the first 2 you mentioned?
line of credit, normally there's a couple different ways to get it. It's either through a corporate credit trade line or it's going to come through a bank line of credit. The bank lines of credit are always going to be a personally guaranteed line of credit.
Right, because when you were mentioning these 3 different types, that refreshed my memory that on my American Express dashboard, like, hey, access this line of credit. I'm thinking that seems a little too easy.
Yeah,
There's something about that, behind.
if you got an application to your house, it's probably a business credit card, not a corporate card.
Yeah,
I've never seen a corporate credit card application come to my house. It is a process. It's a 7-step process. You're not going to just be able to walk out and here's an application. All of a sudden you have corporate credit. It's a
right,
7-step process that we put every business owner through. Now, somebody coming on from, outside the United States, those first couple steps are going to be a little bit more challenging because there's not as many options. But once we start moving into tier 3 and tier 4 accounts, that's the promised land. That's where Wall Street lives. That's where they have access to the capital that they need without a personal guarantee. So if somebody says, I should also mention this too, the
sure.
credit scoring is different for corporate. It goes from 0 to 100. So if somebody says, hey, you have access to this amazing business credit card because your credit score is 740. That's a business credit card. That's not a corporate card.
Okay.
Corporate cards are never going to go over 100. So that's kind of how you can gauge that. A good business credit score is going to be 80 or higher. That's going to be equivalent to a 720.
So Melissa and I joked around because I like seeing, the LinkedIn profiles. And so for everyone watching, her LinkedIn profile tag name, her first one is Fiscal Fitness Coach. And it is very fitting, I have to say,
Thank
because
you.
I feel like a confidence lift right here for my own business, for the corporation. Like, I need to engage with Melissa Green and really improve that credit score because I have never heard of like the 0 to 100. I always think about that 760 or that one. So that's certainly something I feel like it's just missing in business conversations. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think it's like your niche could be something where like CEOs or CFOs, that's something they talk about. But for someone who's just starting out their own business by themselves, a solopreneur, this is definitely not the first thing they even think about in the first couple of years. So again, thank you so much for even explaining the differences. Now, is there a way to find out the 0 to 100? Is there like a link to click or any application?
So not necessarily a link, but what happens is you have to. So when you are working on business credit, it doesn't work the same way as it does on the personal credit side. On the personal credit side, every transaction that you do is reported to TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, right? You don't have to do anything. Well, on the business side, the bureaus are different. It's Dun & Bradstreet, Experian Business, and Equifax Business, not to be confused with Experian and Equifax. They're different. And so you had to physically register with those bureaus. It doesn't actually happen for you. And so all business credit reports are public information, but you do have to pay for them. So it depends on who you're trying to get your report through. They're going to run somewhere between $50 to $150 every time you need to do a pull. If somebody is a member with us, we can pull that for free. We don't charge for that, but that's where you go to find out what your credit score is. And while we're talking about business credit reports, I'll also say that I run into business owners all the time who've been open for years and think that they have a solid business credit score because they've been paying off, say, an American Express business credit card every single month, never had a late payment, paid off all their loans for the bank, and then I go and look at it and their credit score doesn't exist, or the recommendation that they have is like $1,000 or something really minuscule. And it's happening because either there's a mistake in their foundational items or in the way they're set up with the Bureau, or the transactions that they're doing isn't getting reported, which is what happens a majority of the time. On corporate credit, it's a little backwards because the amount of money that you have access to is based on your proof ability to borrow and pay, not based on your revenue. So people will ask me all the time, or they'll say, oh, I'm too small, or I'm just getting going and I can't do that yet. Well, that's not really true. You could build that and not even be open yet and still have more capital available to you on your EIN that companies that have been around for years may not even have themselves because they're not structured properly.
I see. Well, as a follow-up question, then, can you share a little bit? I know this would be part of your representation as a client, but are there a couple items that some potential clients for you could get ready to share with you? Like, okay, I got these documents because
Mhm.
immigration world, they always ask us for checklist. So there are a couple items that maybe they could get started so they have ready for you.
Okay, so it's going to depend. There's not going to be a certain stack because technically we're a SaaS company, so software as a service. We take the 5% of companies that do report transactions to the business credit bureaus in one place. And so there's hundreds of different options that are in
That's right.
there. But when someone is a member with us, they have access to all of their underwriting criteria, and they'll also be able to see which accounts are personally guaranteed and which ones are not. So for somebody coming in, they're going to need to choose accounts that don't require a personal guarantee in order to be eligible. And then when they go inside and they see the list of criteria needed to be able to apply and get approved for this card, it could be store cards, it could be vehicles. There's a whole list of different companies in there, but
Right.
they already know exactly what they need to apply for that account. Now, one thing I will say though is that when you're going through this process and the first step, there are foundational items that had to be done before we can start the credit building process, really to prevent denials down the road. There are 4 things that may cost a business owner money. So one is they need to make sure they have a website. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It could be a simple one pager. It just needs to exist. So website, a business email to the business domain. So no Gmail, no Yahoo, no Hotmail. They get flagged for fraud, and it's an automatic denial on a lot of accounts with those. So business domain. One that really gets a lot of people is they need to be registered to 411. Their business phone number registered to 411, even though nobody's used 411 in over 20 years.
Right.
It's still there. And the last one is to make sure that they're not using a home address or a PO box. And when they're applying for Secretary of State, IRS, any of the business credit bureaus, all the information that they're putting on there needs to look exactly the same all the way across the board, because if they all use AI algorithms now. So if your address is Suite and you spell it SUITE on the IRS for the IRS, and then for the Secretary of State you put STE, it's going to kick you out. Those are the ones that I always want to make sure that people know
Wow.
coming into it.
No, that's a good call. Wow. That makes me think I need to fix some things. Now that you mentioned that, definitely don't want to lose money or pay more. I was going to mention also, Melissa, is that with our employment-based company immigration filings, when they send like a request for evidence, when they want more information, they've actually listed on there like you're not registered on the what do you call that?
Dun
Dun
and
Bradstreet.
Bradstreet.
Yeah, you're not registered. And we fight back and say there's not a requirement to do that. But now I understand based
Mhm.
on what you shared. Like that's a way for the government, USCIS, to make sure you're a legitimate company.
Right.
even though they're not checking credit. It's very
Right.
interesting.
The first foundational items, we call it foundational items, but really it's a fraud check. So
Yeah, that makes
there's
sense.
150 things on there that they're going to look, but Dunn's, if you're going to rent a commercial lease, it almost always asks for a Dunn's number, which is your credit score on Dun and Bradstreet. So it's normally better to start this credit building process before you open so that you have a Dunn's number to put on your application.
So it sounds like ideally a client would need to engage with you when they touch down to America or even before. Sounds like
Mhm.
they could potentially start this before they come to America. So they need your services and my services. So, hey, everyone, if you're starting a business in America, consider Melissa's company and also Green Card Guys. Okay, this comes in tandem now. So, but really, we want the best case scenario for our clients, right? Because lawyers, it's typically like, oh, something bad happened or negative on their situation. So, okay, I need to call a lawyer. But in this situation, Melissa, the reason I'm appreciate your time on the show is because we want to show that we're proactive and want to provide value to our audience. And, there's a lot of things you need to do, get done. It's not just like sign a lease and sweep the floors and make sure it's all ready to go. Like there's a lot of things behind the scenes to build that credit.
Mhm. It takes, timeline wise, at least 10 to 12 months, and that's fast. So if someone were to do this on their own, which they can totally do it, it just takes a long time. It's usually somewhere
Yeah.
around 3 to 7 years.
Oh, yikes. Okay, let's get that expedited. My goodness. Yeah, we have some clients that tried it themselves, hire like a consultant for immigration, and it backfired. So sounds pretty similar. All right, y'all in the audience, it's really best to engage with Melissa's company, and of course, we're gonna have your information, your company's information, in the description box below for anyone that's interested. I do have a little another, I guess, more of a background question to follow up. The quick context. I helped with like reviewing leases a long time ago when I was handling other items other than immigration. And on there, they tip the landlords. They usually want a personal guarantor.
Mhm.
Now, is this potentially? Can you explain in your perspective, like the negative connotation, or not just connotation, but like literally the negative reason why you should not be a sign off as a personal guarantor if you can?
So I have a personal experience. So before I got into this, the whole reason I got into this was because I was running and operating businesses for about 18 years, but I had a business that I owned 75% of the shares of. It was a gaming and esports company. And we put the business on the application, but I was the guarantor on that. And so when COVID hit and we had to shut the doors, we had to, get rid of it pretty quickly because there was $750,000 that I personally was liable for because the doors are shut. And even when the doors are reopened, people aren't coming in. They're not wanting to touch things that other people have been touching when there's a pandemic or something like that going on. And so we were going to have to sell our shares. But I would have been, if we hadn't sold it, I would have been liable for $750,000. So that's the answer on the lease portion. The other part of that I'll mention too is that I've seen, and this is kind of on a different scale, but a transportation company, let's say if they buy a fleet of 120 semis and they personally guaranteed all of those vehicles instead of putting it on their EIN, it
Yikes.
only takes one wreck to lose the whole fleet. You lost your income, and now because your name is on those fleets, and this actually happened to a client, but he was personally liable for $45 million.
Yikes. Yeah.
So you never want to put your name on there. I'm going to say ever, but
Yeah.
there's other things you can do to try to protect yourself. But people think that their commercial insurance is going to cover everything, and it
Okay.
sometimes does, but it doesn't always. So
It almost seems like people, our audience, my audience here, need to contact you first to start building that corporate credit because, man, yeah, the lease, because usually landlords, from what I know, want at least 3 to 5 years to lock you in, a company, of course. So
yeah,
it's better to get that, not as a personal guarantor.
you
And
want to have
I
a
thank you
score
for
of 80 or higher. And then whatever you're leasing it for, that credit recommendation needs to cover the cost. Not every landlord is going to go without a personal guarantee, but some of the national companies will. So as long as your credit score on, usually they use a Duns number, is 80 or higher, and the credit recommendation that you have covers the cost of that lease, some of the national companies are willing to go without a personal guarantee on that space.
Okay, that's good to know. There's some flexibility. Well, there's a lot of things that people need to do, but y'all, whoever's watching, listening, you definitely need to contact the fiscal fitness coach here, Melissa Green. Okay, there's no excuse. Okay, this can be done. Sounds like, can this be done online to get started with you?
Mhm. Actually, there's some clients that we have that don't live in the United States. There's one guy that I talked to that lives in Munich, but his business is here, so it can all be done online.
Well, that sounds similar to us. Well, Melissa, attorneys, we can talk all day. I can ask questions all day, but we'll wrap it up now. But is anything else you'd like to share as last tips, I suppose?
Not necessarily a tip. I gave away most of them, but
Yeah.
the earlier the better is what I will say. And don't think that just because you have no revenue yet that you can't do this process. You absolutely can.
So let's put it this way, Melissa. Would they hypothetically start the corporation first and then contact you because you need?
So all I really have to have is an EIN. So
Okay.
as long as they're registered, we can help with getting registered with the bureaus. But we have to have an EIN to get going.
Okay, great. Well, so anyone's watching, we'll have a link below of some mini steps to do, and then contact Melissa after that. Okay, so y'all can get started and get you living and working in America legally. Well, Melissa, thank you so much again, everyone. We're going to have Melissa's information down below. And Melissa, again, thank you. Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Bye bye.